What's up, everybody? Hello and welcome to Not Your Average Meta, an MTG Commander channel dedicated to bringing you decks and commanders you wouldn't normally find in your average meta. This week's video is brought to you by our new channel sponsor, International MTG. If you're looking for competitive pricing on your favorite MTG cards old and new, be sure to check out the International MTG store and TCG Player, link in the description of this video. This week on Not Your Average Meta, we're bringing you the first episode in a new series we're starting where we visit a specific MTG plane and we each play a commander from that plane. First plane up this week is Zendikar. We'd also like to shout out our second full-time channel sponsor for Season 3, The Hobby Horse. If you're ever in the Central Illinois area, be sure to stop in and check out the store as well as saying hi to Martin. This week's Zendikar matchup features Ryan returning, playing his Cleric Tribal deck being led by Orah, Skyclave Hierophant, Gavin back this week playing his Wizard Tribal deck being led by Kaza, Roil Chaser, Foggrow rocking his Azorius commander Noyan Dar, Roil Shaper, and his land creature deck, and finally Justin playing his Rakdos Good Stuff deck being led by Zagras, Thief of Heartbeats. Now that we have our fighters, let's step into the Thunderdome and see which deck will come out on top. Turn 1, Gavin plays a Cavern of Souls for turn naming Wizards, and then pays to cast a Mana Bolt. Fog plays a tapped Razortide Bridge for turn. Justin plays a Bloodstained Mire for turn, paying 1 life to crack it in order to go get a land from his library. Ryan plays a Swamp. Gavin plays an Island for turn that pays 2 to cast his commander Kaza. Fog plays a Cascading Cataracts and passes. Justin plays a tapped Temple of Malice and looks at the top card of his library before scrying it to the bottom. Ryan plays a Snow-Covered Plains and casts a Phyrexian Missionary. Gavin plays another island for turn that pays to cast an Archmage Emeritus. Fog plays an island for turn that casts a Frantic Search. He then draws 2 cards, discards 2 cards, and untaps 3 lands. Fog then casts Ask for Told and passes. Justin plays a Haunted Ridge for turn. Ryan plays an Urborg before casting a Priest of Ancient Lore, drawing a card, and gaining a life when he enters play. He then goes to combat, swings his Missionary at Fog for 2 damage while he gains 2 life. On his upkeep, Gavin loses a life to his Vault. He then draws for turn before casting an Arcane Signet. On his upkeep, Fog adds a counter to his enchantment and draws for turn. He then plays the Plains for turn before casting a Gear Orah and playing his second land. Justin plays 2 lands for turn that taps out to cast a Doom Whisperer. Ryan plays a Snow-Covered Swamp to cast Minthara, Merciless Soul. He then swings his Missionary at Fog again, gaining 2 more life, while he attacks Gavin with his Priest. On his upkeep, Gavin loses another life and draws for turn. He then plays a Mountain before casting a Docent of Perfection. On his upkeep, Fog adds a counter to his enchantment and draws for turn. He then plays an island before casting his commander Noyan Dar. Fog then casts Tomik off his Foretold trigger and passes. On his end step, Justin pays 2 life to surveil 2 cards, keeping them both on top of his library. Justin plays 2 lands for turn, then casts an Everflowing Chalice, kick 3 times. He then casts a Traxos Scourge of Krug. Ryan just casts his commander Orah and passes. On his upkeep, Gavin loses another life and then draws for turn. He then plays another Mountain for turn, then taps his commander. He then taps out to cast an Epic Experiment where X is equal to 6. He then creates a Wizard token and flips his Docent into a final iteration. He then exiles the top 6 cards of his library and casts a free Mana Geyser, which creates him 15 red mana. Gavin then uses 7 mana to cast Brass's Bounty, creating himself 6 treasure tokens. He then draws off his Archmage before casting a kicked Rite of Replication, which draws him a card and creates him 5 more Archmage tokens. Gavin then goes to combat, swinging his Iteration at Ryan for 6 damage, before remembering he should have been creating more Wizard tokens. On his upkeep, Fog adds a counter to his enchantment and draws for turn. He then pays to cast a Spark Double, who enters play as a copy of his commander. On Fog's end step, Justin pays 2 life to surveil 2 more cards, putting 1 into his graveyard. Justin draws for turn, then plays 2 more lands, bouncing a land back to his hand. He then casts Kothafed, which then untaps his Traxos. Ryan plays a Swamp for turn to cast an Ancestor's Prophet. On his end step, Gavin casts a Dramatic Reversal. He then creates another Wizard token and draws 6 cards off his Archmages and untaps all of his permanents. Gavin plays 2 lands for turn to cast a Stonybrook Banneret. He then goes to combat, swinging his Wizard token divided up among all of his opponents. Ryan blocks 3 of them, which has 1 of his creatures and 3 of Gavin's creatures dying, causing Justin to lose 4 life and draw 4 cards. Gavin then casts a Windfall, and in response, Fog casts an Azorius Charm, choosing to draw a card. This then triggers both his Noyan Dar triggers, and he puts 3 +1/+1 counters on 2 of his lands. Gavin then draws 6 cards, and everybody discards their hands and draws 10 cards. He then casts an Azami Lady of Scrolls, which Fog counters with a free counterspell. Fog then triggers his commanders, putting 3 more counters on his lands. On his upkeep, Fog adds a counter to his enchantment and draws for turn. He then pays to foretell a card before casting a free impulse, putting 3 more counters on his lands. He then looks at his top 4 cards of his library, putting 1 into his hand and the rest at the bottom of his library. Fog then goes to combat, swinging 1 of his lands at Gavin and 1 at Ryan. Gavin blocks with a wizard token while Ryan blocks with 1 of his creatures, and Justin pays 2 life to fail 2 more times. Fog then casts a Spectral Deluge from exile in order to bounce each of his opponent's creatures back to their hands with toughness 5 or less. In response, Gavin taps his commander in order to cast an Intellectual Offering, drawing 6 cards, before choosing himself and Justin to draw 3 cards each. He then chooses himself and Ryan to untap all their permanents. Not finding what he's looking for, he then casts a Factor Fixin, drawing 6 more cards, before revealing the top 5 cards of his library, picking Ryan to separate them into 2 piles. Gavin then chooses one of the piles before casting an Abrade, drawing 6 more cards. He then uses the Abrade to destroy Fog's Tomic, and the Deluge finally resolves, which bounces most of the creatures off the field. Justin plays a Bazooka Bog for turn, exiling Gavin's graveyard. He then plays a Command Tower for turn and casts a Hazardous Monument before casting his commander, Zagras. This then has him discarding a card and then drawing a card off his monument. Justin swings his Traxxas at Ryan for 4 damage, while he swings his Doom Whisper at Gavin for 6 damage. On his end step, Fog casts a Brainstorm, putting +1/+1 counters on more of his lands, before drawing 3 cards and putting 2 of them back on top of his library. Ryan draws and casts an Edgewalker, as well as recasting his commander and then a Shadowrite Priest. On his upkeep, Gavin loses another life, while Fog casts a Faithful Mending, gaining 2 life, drawing 2 cards, and discarding 2 cards. He then adds more counters to his lands, and Gavin draws for turn. He then plays 2 lands for turn before recasting his commander. Gavin recasts a Stony Banneret, his Archmage Emeritus, and a Siren Stormtamer. He then casts a Crow Mox, exiling a card from his hand, and then an Overwhelmed Apprentice, which mills each opponent for 2 cards while he scries 2. On his upkeep, Fog adds a counter to his enchantment and draws for turn. He then plays 2 lands for turn and then casts an Always Watching, as well as a Herald of Secret Streams. He then goes to combat, swinging his unblockable creatures at both Ryan and Gavin. But before damage is dealt, Gavin tells Ryan, "Hold the phone, I got this." He then casts an Aetherize to bounce all of Fog's attacking creatures back to his hand. He then draws a card, and in response, Fog casts your Temples under attack, having himself and Ryan both draw 2 cards. The spell then resolves, and Fog bounces his creatures back to his hand before flashing back his Faithful Mending. He then gains 2 more life, puts counters on his land, draws 2 cards, and then discards 2 cards. On his end step, Justin casts Hero's Downfall to destroy Fog's Herald. Justin plays 2 lands for turn to cast a Gilded Lotus, which then untaps his Traxxas. He then casts a Demonic Tutor to go find a card in his library before casting a Cunning Rhetoric along with Tegrid, God of Fright. He then goes to combat, swinging 10 damage in the air at Fog. Ryan plays a Bolas Citadel, then pays 5 life to cast Call to the Grave, then plays a land for turn. He then casts a Path to exile Justin's Tegrid, before he then pays 6 more life to cast Mikaeus the Unhallowed. Ryan then goes to combat, swinging his commander Gavin for 4 damage while he gains 4 life. He then pays another 4 life to cast Whisper, as well as another 2 for a Null Priest of Oblivion. He finally pays to cast Alice Elcor and passes his turn. On his upkeep, Gavin loses life and then sacrifices his apprentice to the Call to the Grave. Gavin then plays 2 lands for turn, then taps his commander in order to cast a discounted Giant's Emulating Inferno, where X is equal to 11. He then chooses to target each of his opponents, dealing 11 damage to each of them. On his upkeep, Fog adds a counter to his enchantment, sacks his commander, and then draws for turn. He then plays a land for turn before casting a Hollowmere Tidecaller and going to combat. Fog then swings 3 of his lands at Gavin and 2 of them at Ryan. Gavin blocks with his Siren and then takes the rest of the damage while Ryan gets taken out of the game. Fog then free casts Part the Water Veil to take an extra turn. He then casts a Terra Eternal and passes the turn to himself. On his upkeep, Fog adds a counter to his enchantment and draws for turn. He then plays 2 lands for turn and recasts his commander a second time. He then casts Deliberate, putting a counter on one of his lands, before scrying 2 cards and drawing a card. He then casts Candlekeep Inspiration, giving all of his creatures base power and toughness 10-10. He then goes to combat, swinging 3 lands at Gavin to take him out of the game, while he swings 1 at Justin, who blocks with his Doom Whisperer. He then casts a Wayfarer's Bauble and passes. Justin plays 2 lands for turn to cast a Shadowgrange Archfiend, which causes Fog to sack his 9/9 land while he gains 9 life. In response, Fog floats a mana off his land, then pays to sack his Bauble to go get a land to put into play. Justin then casts a Heb Dreadhorde Champion, causing him to discard and draw a card. He then casts Drana Liberative Malakir, discarding another card and drawing a card. Justin then casts a Curtain Call, destroying both of Fog's remaining creatures, before going to combat, swinging 10 more damage at him in the air. On his upkeep, Fog adds a counter to his enchantment and draws 4 cards for turn thanks to his Orah. He then plays a land for turn before recasting his commander a 3rd time. He then goes to combat, swinging his 3 lands at Justin, causing him to exile the top card of his library to Cunning Rhetoric. Since it's a land, it stays in exile, and Justin blocks 2 of Fog's creatures while he still takes 7 damage. Justin casts Tiny Bone Trinket Thief, and then discards a card and draws a card. He then casts Yahini and Kiki Jiki Mirror Breaker, which he uses to create a copy of his Archfiend. This then causes Fog to sack one of his lands while he gains 6 life. Justin then goes to combat, swinging 10 more damage in the air at Fog, who in response casts Mandate of Peace to end the combat phase. This then puts more counters on his lands. On his upkeep, Fog adds a counter to his enchantment and draws for turn. He then doesn't find what he needs to win the game and scoops the game up to Justin.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you can see more games and decks you wouldn't normally see in your average meta.